decided to call this rather short presentation Deconstructing Ippon. Certainly next week and the week after, we'll be getting into a little bit more detail, not only about the theory of what Ippon is, but how you can actually use the content of what I'm going to be talking about to give you some extra things to work on in your keiko when you finally get a chance to do it. So, without further ado, I shall get in to the presentation. So this is kind of, I've been working on this for quite a few years now, and every year it gets a little bit more complex, but this is my pictorial representation of what an ippon is. And you can see that it starts at number one, the Seme-ai or Seme, where you're facing off against each other in chudan or whatever. You're looking for an opening or an opportunity, or trying to create an opportunity to destabilize your opponent, at which point, depending on the situation that you have created or it presents itself, you apply a technique, various kinds of techniques, various timings, and then you make the strike, or you execute the waza, the uchi, okay, the datotsu. Following the datotsu, or following the actual strike, you flow into the next stage, which is Zanshin, or lingering mind, which is continued physical and psychological alertness, ready for any counterattack or perhaps another attack. And then you're back to number one. And so what I'm trying to represent with this graph is that it's not just a ready, set, go, finish situation. It's a constantly evolving process that goes on and on and on. There's no real end to it. If you're talking about a shiai, then once you get back to number one, if it was a decent strike, then the shimpan will have their flags up and they will call for you to go back to the start lines again. But failing that, it just keeps going on and on. So it's a never-ending sort of circle, really. And so what I'm going to talk about today is number one, okay, the seme or the Seme-ai, okay, what's going on at that particular step in the process. And from next week, I'll look at number 2 and number 3. And in the final week, I'll look at 4 and number 5. So we get a really solid breakdown of the various components which constitute an ippon. You'll notice that in the middle of this slide, I have the official definition of yuko-datotsu. Now, yuko-datotsu and ippon are basically the same thing. Yuko-datotsu literally means a valid strike, and this is the term that is used in the Kendo rulebook for shiai. And so just to read that, a valid strike, or yuko-datotsu, is defined as an accurate strike or thrust made onto targets, or datotsu bui, with the striking section, or the datotsu bu, of the shinai in high spirits and correct posture, while simultaneously vocalizing the name of the target and followed with continued alertness, or zanshin. This was actually from the old rulebook. It's since been updated, and I just noticed that I haven't updated it in here. But what's missing in this definition is the idea of hasuji, which is the correct angle of the blade when you strike. So you can't just hit the target with the side of the shinai. You've got to have the correct hasuji as well. But we all knew that. So this is, well, officially what an ippon or yuko-datotsu is, but it doesn't really tell you much about the mechanics. It just tells you what the criteria are for the shimpan to award the yuko-datotsu or an ippon to a shiaisha. So, as you can see that number one, one of the key words that I have here is a term called San-sappo, which is to kill the opponent's technique and their sword and their spirit. San-sappo. Maybe you have come across this word in the dojo, or perhaps in the shodan or nidan or sandan gradings and the written examinations. Is certainly a common term that you hear in Japan. I'm not sure how many people are aware of the term in New Zealand, but you definitely should know it. And by the end of this short session, you'll have an understanding of what San-sappo